Hello, my name is Casey, and I will be doing a podcast on the psychology of love language and the influences that relate to your childhood and the relationships you had growing up. Over the course of this podcast, I will be diving into infant development and the stages of need in affection, childhood and early teens, and also how love language is formed and what it can mean about you. So, starting off with infant development, when children are born, their first need is that connection with the mother. Breastfeeding and the development of teething can shape parts of your personality without you even realizing it. Someone who is orally neglected, or neglect meaning not being able to accomplish fulfillment of total need, will usually end up being someone who talks a lot and will chew an excessive amount of gum. Being held can also have a huge effect on how you act and who you are. People who are not held enough or stimulated by touch tend to be very physically dependent on their friends, family, and loved ones. They tend to be excessively physically affectionate in their everyday relationships. They also tend to be people who describe themselves as huggers or other affectionate traits. Going into childhood and early teens, this is when people start to copy and pick up traits from the people around them. Even when they may not realize it, as a kid, every habit you form is either formed from your parents or your close friends. From the ages 8 to 16 is when you will solidify the way you will love your friends and partners around you, based on the template that your parents or loved ones have demonstrated for you. Even if there was a slight amount of trauma or neglect within a family unit, it can greatly shape how you will act as an adult in everyday relationships. These patterns are later known as your love language. There are 5 significant kinds of love language. There is gift giving, quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, and acts of service. Gift givers are people who generally grew up in a household where parents didn't show much affection to each other but would bring home gifts for each other or the children and surprise each other with objects or trips. Gift givers tend to attract other gift givers or those who fall under the acts of service language, who compensate for the gifts by acts of service around the household or in the relationship. Quality time language applies to people who grew up in a home where there was a tight bond with loved ones. This could be anyone that they were close to. They tend to find value in giving their time to those who they love to show their affection. These people also tend to attract people who didn't have the same childhood and find comfort in the attention that they lacked in their childhood. Physical touch is a language where a person most likely grew up in a household that had absent parents or had some sort of separation trauma as a child. However, most people won't even realize they had trauma or that their parents deprived them of the attention that they needed during their development as a child. This results in them later displacing this need into those they love and being overly affectionate or sometimes touchy. These people normally attract people of the same love language and they feed off each other's love language to satisfy the deprivation they experienced as children. People who fall under words of affirmation are rarer than others. These people tend to be physically less dependent. These people most likely had a household where issues were usually never talked about and just made up for over an abundance of physical attention. So these people find less value in physical comfort than verbal confirmation. These people tend to attract people with an abundance of trauma or some sort of trust issue. These people tend to attract other people with abundant trauma or some sort of trust issues. The constant verbal confirmation is comfortable for those people, and there is very little room left for anonymity. And these relationships actually tend to last fairly long. Finally, people who fall under the love language of acts of service. These people grow up to be pleasers and most likely grew up in a household where the parent that they took after was a pleaser and is submissive in the relationship. They will do any act of kindness in the relationship or around the house just to ease any anxiety that their partner might be having in their life. These people normally attract gift givers and the relationships normally complement each other very well. But overall, despite what love language you think you fall under, these are only statistics and generalizations. There are exceptions in everyone's lives that we can see where exceptions are made to these generalizations. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast.